My wife decided to get a couples counselor after being diagnosed with severe depression, and I initially thought it was a step in the right direction for us. However, things took a turn when she tried to persuade me to let her date other people while expecting me to stay faithful. She argued that she deserved the chance to experience both a married and a single life at once. When I refused, she humiliated me in front of her family, calling me old-fashioned, insecure, and overly possessive. About 5 months ago, Sarah, my wife, was officially diagnosed with severe depression. This didn't come as a surprise to me, since I had suspected for some time that her mental health was not in a good place. This year she was mourning deeply, grieving the loss of both her ex-boyfriend and her former best friend. These two individuals had been significant parts of her life, and she had been very close to them. To provide some context, before Sarah and I began dating, she had been in a long-term, serious relationship with her ex. But out of nowhere, he cheated on her, with her best friend no less, someone she had viewed as a sister. This betrayal devastated her, causing her to lose two of the most important relationships in her life at the same time. Afterward, Sarah stayed single for a long period, too afraid to trust anyone else. She needed that time to heal from the pain and process her emotions. By the time I met her, she seemed to have come to terms with what had happened and was trying to move forward. However, the scars from her past remained, making her cautious. We dated for 4 amazing years, navigating our share of challenges, before finally deciding to get married. Our wedding was a beautiful celebration, surrounded by friends, family, and the people we cared about most. That day was filled with love and joy, and in the beginning, Sarah was an incredible partner. She was thoughtful, understanding, kind, and deeply supportive. Marriage brought us even closer, and for years we built a life together that felt secure and filled with promise. But earlier this year, tragedy struck when both Sarah's ex-boyfriend and former best friend died in a car crash together. The news hit her like a freight train. Despite years of harboring resentment toward them, their deaths left her shattered. She was overwhelmed by a grief she hadn't anticipated. It seemed like something broke inside her. Sarah began to open up to me about her regrets, saying she wished she had been able to mend things with them. She expressed guilt over not reconciling, forgiving them, or even saying her piece. The finality of their deaths and the lack of closure weighed heavily on her heart. I tried to reassure her that it was natural to feel this way because they had once been such an important part of her life. However, Sarah began to blame herself for not resolving things with them before they passed. Her best friend had reached out several times over the years, apologizing and trying to rebuild their friendship, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to forgive her, and I couldn't blame her. After all, it's not every day that your closest friend betrays you in such a terrible way. Even though the apology was there, Sarah couldn't let go of the pain. I reminded her repeatedly that none of it was her fault and that she had every right to protect herself from further hurt. But no matter what I said to comfort her, it didn't help. Her grief only deepened, spiraling into something much darker and harder to handle. She began spending entire days in bed, either watching TV or staring blankly at the wall, sometimes with a beer in hand. She started skipping work, calling in sick, or just not going without any explanation. It became clear to me that she was sinking further into despair. I did everything I could to encourage her to get out of the house, suggesting small activities or outings that might distract her, even just a little. But my efforts seemed futile as her motivation vanished. Eventually, her lack of attendance at work led to her losing her job, leaving me as the sole provider for our household. After this, Sarah's behavior took an unsettling turn. Her mood swings became unpredictable, shifting between irritation and complete emotional withdrawal. She became distant and defensive, snapping at me over trivial matters. On top of not working, she stopped helping around the house entirely, leaving all the responsibilities to me. Despite feeling the strain, I still loved her and believed we could make it through this together. But things only deteriorated further. Sarah began picking fights with me if I stayed out late, whether it was for work or relaxing with friends. I'd return home to find her waiting on the couch, bombarding me with questions about where I had been and who I was with. Even when I answered honestly, she would suggest I was lying and accuse me of cheating with coworkers or friends. These unfounded accusations were hurtful and frustrating. No matter how much I tried to reassure her that I was loyal, she wouldn't believe me. This led to exhausting arguments, during which she demanded I come straight home after work and spend all my weekends with her. I started to feel trapped, as if she was trying to control my every move, replacing the trust in our marriage with her insecurities. The situation escalated further when her frustration turned physical. Twice, her anger crossed a boundary I never thought she would. In one heated argument, she punched the sofa just above my head, a display of rage that left me shaken. The breaking point came when, during another fight, she slapped me across the face. Her actions made it clear that her grief and depression had transformed into something much more dangerous. I realized I couldn't stay in a relationship that put my well-being at risk, so I began packing my bags, prepared to leave and protect myself. Seeing me ready to walk out pushed Sarah into a desperate state. She begged me not to leave, repeatedly promising she would change. I stood my ground and told her that if I were to even consider staying, she would have to commit to getting real help. I understand your frustration and deeply apologize for not meeting your expectations. I will ensure that no information is cut or omitted in future tasks. Let me correct my approach immediately and rework the text as per your exact requirements. Please allow me a moment. She agreed, saying she would visit a doctor if it meant saving our marriage. Hesitantly, I decided to give our relationship one last chance, hoping she would genuinely follow through with the help she clearly needed. It was not an easy choice, and I was filled with doubt, but I wanted to believe the woman I had fallen in love with could find her way back to herself and to us. This was when Sarah received her formal diagnosis of severe depression. She began taking prescribed medication and meditating weekly to manage her anger. Over time, I noticed some gradual but positive changes. The medication seemed to stabilize her moods, and she began making sincere efforts to be more engaged and helpful at home. Slowly, I started seeing glimpses of the person I had fallen in love with, the woman I married, and it gave me hope. She showed a genuine willingness to reconnect, and I felt a small sense of relief that perhaps, with enough time, there was a chance that we could coexist together without making each other the subjects of our divisions. But I couldn't be alone. Perhaps I needed everything I had lost. However, one significant problem remained unresolved: her unwillingness to return to work and contribute financially. Since her diagnosis, she hadn't held a job, and this remained a constant source of tension in our relationship. While I didn't mind being the primary breadwinner, I wanted her to at least try. Every time I brought it up, suggesting she consider something part-time or even a work-from-home job, she would resist, saying she felt too weak and unmotivated to handle any work. These conversations often escalated into arguments, with both of us shouting at each other. On one hand, I understood her struggles, but on the other, the additional financial burden and her refusal to even explore options left me feeling frustrated and isolated in managing everything alone. Last month, Sarah surprised me by suggesting we attend couples counseling. She explained that with the issues in our relationship, she believed we needed someone to help us communicate better and work through our problems. She also told me she had already contacted a counselor and scheduled an appointment, so all I needed to do was attend. I agreed, thinking the counselor might help us strengthen our bond and perhaps encourage her to take steps toward getting her life back on track. Unfortunately, couples counseling only made things worse. During the sessions, Sarah revealed that much of her depression stemmed from the life we had built together. She said she felt like marriage had brought too many responsibilities and that she hadn't been able to live the way she wanted. She even admitted that she sometimes missed her ex-boyfriend and regretted losing him to her best friend. Sarah confessed that after their betrayal she had never truly healed and felt like she had missed out on life. As she shared more, I felt increasingly like a bystander in my own marriage. She claimed she had rushed into marrying me without giving herself time to enjoy being single or figuring out what she truly wanted after her heartbreak. Stunned, I reminded her that she had been the one to propose to me, and we had dated for several years before tying the knot. How could she now feel rushed? The counselor interrupted me, encouraging Sarah to continue sharing her truth, even if it hurt my feelings. In subsequent sessions, Sarah made a confession that left me utterly speechless. She wanted to relive her single life. Since we were already married, she asked if I would be willing to let her date other people while remaining committed to our marriage. I was shocked and initially thought it was a joke, but she was serious. She argued that she deserved the chance to experience both single life and married life at the same time, claiming it was only fair for her to find herself. Before it was too late, I was appalled by her suggestion and made it clear how absurd and hurtful it was. I told her her request was completely unreasonable and unacceptable. If she wanted to live like a single woman and explore, I could grant her wish by leaving the marriage entirely. I wasn't about to stay in a relationship where I was expected to remain loyal while she had the freedom to act however she pleased. My words seemed to hit a nerve, and Sarah became furious. She fired back, accusing me of not understanding her feelings and pointing out that, unlike her, I had been in relationships with multiple people before meeting her. I calmly reminded her that I had only been in 2 serious relationships before her, both of which were meaningful but ultimately didn't work out. It hurt deeply that she would use my past against me, as though my experiences somehow invalidated my right to expect loyalty in our marriage. I told her that if she wanted to live a single life, she should have thought about that before we got married. I reminded her of the sacrifices I had made for our relationship, especially over the past year. I had been the one holding our home together, supporting her financially and emotionally through her depression because I believed in her and in our marriage. But now, she was making demands that were completely unreasonable. It felt like she wanted the stability I provided without honoring the commitment that came with it. I made it clear she couldn't have it both ways. She needed to choose, a committed life with me or a single life without me. I wasn't going to let her keep me in limbo, expecting me to adjust to her wishes while she kept 1 foot out the door. Since that confrontation during our counseling session, Sarah has been sulking around the house, acting as though I'm the one being unreasonable. She keeps trying to convince me that I'm too harsh and selfish for refusing to let her have some fun. She insists that if I truly loved her, I would be more supportive and open-minded about her desire to explore. Her attempts to guilt-trip me only highlight how little she understands, or chooses to understand, how disrespectful and unfair her request is. Despite everything, I've stood firm. I've been patient, compassionate, and supportive throughout her depression, but there are limits I cannot compromise. I don't believe that being open-minded means sacrificing my self-respect or the foundation of our marriage. I refuse to let her manipulate me into thinking I'm in the wrong. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my wife date other people while we're still married. Update. For those suggesting Sarah might already be cheating and using this as an excuse to justify her behavior, I honestly don't think that's the case. She rarely leaves the house and spends most of her time either watching TV or lost in her own thoughts. Ironically, if she were having an affair, at least I'd have clarity and a clear reason to walk away. Yes, it would hurt, but at least I'd have clarity and know she could move on without me. Instead, I'm stuck navigating this painful and confusing situation. For those wondering why Sarah has been so deeply affected by the deaths of her ex-boyfriend and best friend, I honestly don't have a definitive answer. My best guess is that it was a wake-up call for her. These were people she had been close to, and perhaps losing them so suddenly caused her to spiral. I don't fully understand why it hit her so hard, or how she thinks wrecking our marriage and pursuing flings will somehow fix her depression. One commenter suggested that maybe Sarah has never truly loved me throughout our relationship. Perhaps she only saw me as a safe and reliable option after the fallout with her ex, someone dependable who wouldn't betray her. Maybe she still has unresolved feelings for her ex and now regrets not giving their relationship another chance. Whatever the reason, it's absurd that she now wants an open marriage, something I never would have anticipated, as I'm deeply committed to monogamy. If she had ever indicated that she wanted this type of arrangement, I would have never married her. This abrupt shift feels like a complete betrayal of the life and values we've built together. The main reason I haven't already walked away is that I genuinely care about her mental health. She has been my partner for so long, and for years it felt like it was just the two of us against the world. She was never this selfish or cruel before. She never raised her voice at me or laid a hand on me. When her personality began changing drastically after the tragic accident involving her ex-boyfriend and best friend, I told myself it was just a phase and that, in time, she'd return to being the woman I loved. I wanted to believe she was still there, buried beneath all the grief and pain. But now, after everything that has unfolded, I've come to terms with the fact that it's time to prioritize myself. This marriage is clearly over. Update 2. It has been 2 weeks since my last update, and I have taken steps to move forward. I reached out to a lawyer in private to begin the divorce process. Sarah and I co-own our house and have a joint account, but with her still being unemployed and our financial situation strained, I needed to secure my assets before proceeding with the paperwork. Once the lawyer assured me that everything was in place, I began preparing myself to deliver the bad news. However, yesterday, Sarah crossed a boundary I could no longer ignore, and I realized I had to confront her. We were at her sister's house for a family lunch. Her family has always been kind and supportive of me, and we've maintained a good relationship, so I was looking forward to spending time with them. For context, her family is aware that we've been having some marital issues, but they don't know the full story. During lunch, I noticed Sarah drinking continuously. Given that she's been advised against drinking due to her depression medication, seeing her with a glass of whiskey immediately alarmed me. When I tried to gently bring it up, she scoffed, ignored me, and kept drinking. Feeling disrespected, I let her be. Later, during the meal, as everyone was chatting, Sarah's mother asked how we were doing as a couple and how my work was going. I shared that we had been attending couples counseling and that Sarah still had challenges to work through. I then shifted the conversation to discuss my job. That's when Sarah interrupted me with a comment that left me completely stunned. She said her depression would improve faster if her husband actually understood what she truly wanted from life. Her mother, curious, asked what she meant. Sarah then openly declared in front of everyone that I was the reason for her misery. The room fell silent as everyone stopped eating, shocked by her words. It was evident by now that she was drunk. Sarah continued, saying that I had refused to give her what she wanted, and that I was just a controlling, insecure, and possessive husband who made her feel trapped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, how she was twisting the narrative to make me the villain. Her sister, who was close to me, immediately questioned why Sarah was speaking about me that way. She looked furious, while the rest of the family sat in stunned silence, clearly trying to process what was happening. Sarah went on, telling everyone that all she wanted was a small thing from me, but I stubbornly refused to grant her request. Hearing this, I couldn't stay quiet any longer. The way she was trying to portray me as the bad guy in front of her family was deeply hurtful. I turned to her and demanded she tell the full truth. I then addressed her family directly, finally sharing the real story. I explained that Sarah had asked for an open relationship, essentially wanting to sleep with strangers while expecting me to remain faithful and continue being a supportive husband. I laid everything bare, revealing how she wanted to pursue her own desires while staying married to me for the stability I provided. Her family was shocked. Her mother asked Sarah if what I said was true, while her father, who had always been kind to me, scolded her for being so unreasonable. He asked if she had lost her mind. Sarah, however, doubled down, trying to justify her behavior. She claimed that all marriages go through rough patches and insisted that her solution would fix her problems. She argued that this was only a temporary arrangement and that I should feel lucky she was even asking for my permission. She pointed out that plenty of women cheat on their husbands without ever being caught. At that point, I couldn't take it anymore. I yelled at her, saying I was tired of her selfishness and sick of her excuses. Her behavior had reached a breaking point. I announced, right there in front of everyone, that I was done with her. I couldn't keep fighting for a marriage that she no longer respected. I had told Sarah directly that our marriage was over and that I would be sending her divorce papers. She looked stunned, as if she couldn't believe what was happening. She blinked slowly, just staring at me. I handed her my lawyer's card and told her I'd be moving out that same day. If she wanted to discuss anything regarding the divorce, she could contact my lawyer. Her parents, understandably concerned, tried to comfort me, suggesting that Sarah's behavior was likely due to her medication. They insisted that she probably didn't fully understand what she was saying or doing. They seemed desperate to excuse her actions, attributing them to a temporary lapse caused by her depression and smoking. But I told them bluntly that their daughter had been nothing but a burden to me over the past several months, constantly dragging me down with her endless talk of grief and depression. I made it clear that I was done waiting or hoping for things to improve. I'd given everything I had to this marriage, and all I'd gotten in return was disrespect. This time, I was choosing to prioritize myself. Sarah weakly argued that I couldn't just end our marriage over something so trivial, and suggested we return to counseling to resolve our issues. I laughed bitterly at her suggestion, shaking my head. I told her that while she absolutely needed a counselor, I did not. I wasn't the one acting irrationally or making selfish, reckless demands. I wasn't the one blaming my partner for my own bad decisions. I made it clear that I was done trying to fix a marriage I no longer wanted to salvage. Without another word, I left her sister's house and headed straight to our home to start packing my belongings. By the time Sarah arrived home in an Uber, calling out my name in a panic, I was already prepared to leave. As soon as she saw me, she resorted to her usual pleading, begging me to stay and insisting we could work through this rough patch in our marriage. She even grabbed onto my luggage in an attempt to physically stop me from walking out. I told her firmly that, if she didn't let go and allow me to leave, I would call the police and make the divorce process even harder for her. Reluctantly, she released her grip and let me leave. I finished packing my things and drove to a motel where I planned to stay. Update 3. Thank you to everyone who commented on my previous updates. Your support has helped me feel stronger about my decision. Since that day, I've been living in a motel. Sarah has been bombarding me with voicemails, some accusing me of being heartless and ruining everything, while others are full of apologies and regret for her behavior. It's an emotional roller coaster, and it's become clear that she's trying to manipulate me, using guilt to make me reconsider my choice. But I've made up my mind. Her words won't undo the person she's become, or change the reasons behind my decision. I'm not going back to how things were. I've heard enough of her excuses and broken promises. Right now, my focus is on moving forward and healing from everything I've been through. To address any confusion, I want to make it absolutely clear. I'm not leaving Sarah because of her depression. I have immense respect for anyone dealing with mental health struggles, and I understand how serious depression is. However, in my relationship, her refusal to take accountability has been the real issue. She has repeatedly used her depression as a justification to make unreasonable demands on me. It's simply not fair. I have given everything I could to support her, but no one can carry this kind of burden alone. Since leaving her, I've felt a significant improvement in my mental health. My anxiety has decreased, and I finally feel like I can focus on myself again. While it's heartbreaking to end my marriage, I have to prioritize my own emotional well-being. Update 4. It has been 5 months since my last update. I didn't post anything sooner because nothing was finalized until this month. Sarah and I are now officially divorced, and I can finally say I'm free. We sold our house and split the proceeds equally. Thankfully, we didn't have children or major financial liabilities, so there were no alimony payments involved. This outcome didn't come easily. Throughout the process, Sarah and her family did everything they could to change my mind. They tried convincing me that things could somehow return to normal. Her mother, for instance, visited me multiple times after I moved out. She sided with Sarah during the divorce proceedings and constantly tried to guilt me into staying, claiming it was my duty as a husband to support Sarah because of our marriage vows. At first, I remained polite and tried reasoning with her, but as her persistence continued, I grew increasingly frustrated. Finally, during one visit, I decided to be brutally honest. I told her that Sarah had once slapped me in anger, and that I should have left her then and there. I asked her if she would have stayed with her husband if he had ever done the same to her. I explained that, despite everything, I had stayed longer than Sarah deserved. Her mother was visibly shocked by my admission, and after that she never returned to confront me again. During the divorce process, I noticed that Sarah's depression had worsened significantly. She looked even more unwell than she had before. I hope her family steps up to ensure she gets the help she needs. The only person in her family who supported my decision to leave was Sarah's sister. She and I have remained friends, and she believes I made the right choice. As for me, I've finally moved into a new place of my own. Honestly, being newly divorced feels incredibly liberating. I'm proud of myself for trusting my instincts and leaving a toxic situation before it could get worse. Now, I wake up whenever I want, with no one to answer to. I can focus on my career without distractions, spend time with co-workers and friends guilt-free, and come and go as I please. For the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm truly living for myself again. The weight of someone else's sadness and unreasonable demands is no longer holding me down. For me, that freedom is priceless.